The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.
Welcome to the Final Furlong podcast. I hope the audio is better on this one than it was on the last one. Apologies for that. I'm Emmet Kennedy, joined by the author of the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide, of which will be published very, very quickly. And we've got a £5 exclusive promo code discount for you. More on that in a second. Paul Ferguson, welcome back to the show.
Matt, you alright?
Yeah, I'm alright, my man. The promo code for the outstanding, essential Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide that you need is scrolling across the screen on YouTube right now. But if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, which is where most people get the Final Furlong podcast, here you go. £5 off the digital copy, the print copy, or the print and digital bundle using the promo code FFCFBG25. Final Furlong Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide 25. FFCFBG25 at weatherbyshop.co.uk or weatherbys.ie. €5, obviously, in Ireland. It's a sensational discount. The biggest discount you will get anywhere. So that's the one you can use now. And you can pre-order your copy of the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide, and this is what you will get. Paul Ferguson.
All the usual statistics and trends are in there, obviously, for every race covered. Aintree being in there as well for all the Grade 1s, and the Grand National, focusing more on Cheltenham, as well as other things in there. Spring horses follow from myself. I look at the bumper division. We have guest contribution from the likes of Jess Stafford's in there again with their breeding angles articles. She looks at particular sires who do well or who might do well this year at the Cheltenham Festival. Don McLean covers the Irish stuff in detail as usual. We've got Rory Delagi with his banker robust selection, looking at the short price favourites throughout the week, and then some daily tips from both Sam Turner and Jodie Standen. So, as always, plenty in there, and a busy couple of weeks now until we go to print. So, I'll be glad once we get that deadline date on the 11th of February.
And all those people are absolutely excellent. Of course, Jodie Standing, someone I would be very keen to get on the show, but Jess's breeding angles are great. But they're all fantastic. Every single person involved in that is absolutely brilliant. Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide. Get your £5, your exclusive Final Furlong £5 discount right now at weatherbyshop.co.uk using your promo code FFCFBG25 and get £5 off the print copy, the digital copy, or the print and digital bundle. You want that print and digital bundle. You want to feel the book in your hand, but also have the easy access of the digital copy as well. We're going to talk about some of the recent races we've seen in the world of jumps racing to try and get more of a handle on the Cheltenham Festival. And the champion hurdle picture became a little bit clearer over the weekend as we saw the champion hurdle trial where, fair play, Constitution Hill did turn up. This race was switched in the calendar to appeal to his connections 2 years ago, or at least a year ago. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but he was there this time around. He has scooted around in what was essentially a canter. He's given everybody a mild heart attack towards the finish of the race, but he is now 1-2 with Jeff Banks. He was about 4-1, 11-4, something like that when I put him up at Christmas. 2's on now. Lossiemouth, who we'll see in the Dublin Racing Festival, 5s. Reigning champion Stateman, 12-1. And Anzadam, Jeff Banks was not massively impressed. A lot of people have gone single figures. He's kept him at 10-1 after he won the Limestone Lad. Focusing on Constitution Hill, final flight mistake aside, it was a pretty effortless piece of work. But what did you make of him, and what do you make of him overall this season?
Yeah, I think I've seen people being a little bit critical of maybe not the performance, but just the fact that he only beat Brentford Hope by such a narrow margin. But in reality, end of January, he's not going to be pushed out for maximum effort in a race against inferior opposition. So I thought it was a more than satisfactory prep race, which I know it's a big race in its own right, but essentially it was being used as a stepping stone to back to the champion hurdle. I was quite surprised that he turned up, to be honest. I know obviously in the end he didn't have much to beat, but there was the possibility of a clash with Lossiemouth, and it didn't look like they were going to step down from that. So just the fact that it wouldn't normally be Nicky Henderson's way of approaching things, having come back so long after an injury. I haven't had the year off when he returned to Kempton, which again, I thought he was good at Kempton. I may question whether Lossiemouth ran to form, but all he can do is travel through his race. And I think that was probably the key thing I took from Saturday's race, was how enthusiastic he was and travelled through the race. And I think under normal circumstances, if whole focus wasn't on the champion hurdle and with his next start, he'd have been pushed out and probably wouldn't have made that mistake at the last. I think that was due to him being eased down off the home bend. So yeah, all in all, that is the one thing that we haven't yet seen since his return to action. We haven't really seen him have to be pushed out, but it's great to see him back, just purely from a national hunt racing purist point of view as well.
Yeah, look, he's one of the best horses in training. He's clearly the best hurdler in training. I'm gonna point out the fact that I tipped him for the Christmas Hurdle at Kempton. I'm not saying that for a pat on the back or, oh my goodness, what a genius you are. It didn't take the intellect of Oppenheimer to work out that Constitution Hill would win the Christmas Hurdle for a third time. I'm making that point to add a bit of stock to the argument I'm going to make. I was really confident he'd win that race. And I've heard some people try and cast aspersions on him and make out, oh, he's not quite the same horse. And I think a lot of those people are the people who were saying things like, Constitution Hill at his best wouldn't be able to give Lossiemouth weight and a beating. And then they look pretty silly afterwards. Now, I've said some dumb things in the past. We're all trying to come up with quotes. But really just be authentic and be yourself. I don't know if he's the same horse, Paul. And like, you go back to 2022, he beats Epatons 12 lengths and 17 lengths. She's a champion hurdle winner. He wins the champion hurdle by 9 lengths, and then he beats Sharjah by 3. When he'd won the Supreme Novice Hurdle, he had destroyed Jetois by 12 lengths. He'd had that hugely impressive Novice Hurdle victory by 14 lengths. Christmas Hurdle last year, he beat Ruban by 9.5 lengths. This year, he's beaten a horse who clearly did not run her race. I don't know whether it's some of Willie's horses were off colour and didn't really perform at Christmas. I think it's more likely that Lossiemouth struggled to adapt in her first run over 2 miles in open company on a flat, speed-favouring track where the race pace was cut out by a horse considered good enough to take on Kyprios on the flat on Champions Day and won by one of the best champion hurdlers we've seen for many a year. But he's only beaten her by 2.5 lengths. And now he's only beaten Brentford Hope by 3 lengths. Yeah, he hasn't come out of third gear. But this is not what we were seeing a couple of years ago. And you're being asked to take 2-1 on. We're not talking about a 2-1 shot or a solid even money favourite. He's a very short odds-on favourite. And when they're that short, you got to ask questions.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. But obviously the market is subject to change because we know, A, we've got the Irish Champion Hurdle coming up on Sunday, and B, is brighter days ahead. I don't think she'll line up at the weekend. It's not been confirmed, but I doubt think she will. But then will she even line up in the Champion Hurdle? The shape of the race could look completely different. So then, again, I say we're not going to find out probably until, well, we're definitely not until the Champion Hurdle itself when he's pushed out. If he is anywhere near his best, but there's a chance that he can still win the Champion Hurdle even if he isn't at that same level that he was at 2 years ago or even 3 years ago when he beat John Bond 22 lengths in the Supreme. He might not need to be that good, and he still could be good enough to win the Champion Hurdle this year. Whether, I say, you want to be taking that kind of price this time, that with so far in advance, remains to be seen, and that's each to their own judgment. But if he's anywhere near his best, I still think he is the horse to beat personally. Yeah,
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. He got an RPR of 150 for his win at the weekend. He got an RPR of 162 for his Christmas Hurdle win, which was more impressive, obviously, and that's a grade 1. Anzadam got an RPR of 159. The 66-1 is starting to look much more interesting. The 50-1 that I got is fine. Rishi Passad got 66s, you swine. Well done, Rishi. 50s and 33s I have. I don't really want to believe it yet because it's a 3-runner race and Paul Townend's probably going to be on Lossiemouth, assuming she wins the Irish Champion Hurdle. But what did you make of Anzadam and the Limestone Lad?
Yeah, obviously the form doesn't really amount to much. Beacon Edge is probably on a downgrade now and is more of a stayer. You could look at the literal form line through the Hatton's Grace that he was beaten he was beaten slightly shorter by Lossiemouth, but he said that was such a slowly run race. I don't think you can take that literally either. I think in terms of horses he's beaten since coming to Ireland, I think his first performance at Fairyhouse when he beat Carla Conti is probably a stronger piece of form. I think she's a decent mare, and she travelled well the following in the next race. Possibly didn't stay behind July Flower over 2.5.
It's probably a good horse too.
Leopardstown, yeah. I think that piece of form is probably a little bit stronger. No one really knows, I think, at this stage how good he could be. There's definitely not enough substance to his form to suggest he should be single figures for the champion head like he is with some, but visually, the way he goes through the race, he travels like I suspect that he would be better in a strongly run race, and a better race might actually suit him. Obviously, he's got the record of 5-year-olds to overcome. That now stands for the past 38 years at 2 winners from 113 runners, but as we've seen, last year's Juvenile seemed to be an exceptional crop. Although he didn't take on any of the top ones, these just seemed to be an extremely above average bunch for some reason.
Yeah, I'm starting to believe. I think there is a question mark about him, and I'm not. Look, I'd love to see Lossiemouth win the Irish Champion. It'd be great to see Stateman go and win it as well, by the way, because that'd be a third win. If Stateman beats Lossiemouth, and I'm going to give you a scenario here. Danny Mullins rides Stateman. That's what's going to happen, right? That's what's going to happen.
This on Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Danny Mullins will ride him. Danny Mullins will give him one of his Dublin Racing Festival specials. He's a brilliant jockey. He rides that track like nobody else. He beats Lossiemouth. That's Lossiemouth's champion hurdle over. That's it. It's done.
That's right. Actually, although thinking about it afterwards, I thought at the time last week Lossiemouth might come over. I thought if you want to take on Constitution Hill, find out 2 mile 1 on the new course.
Yes, Paul.
If you're beaten, let's go for them. It was likely then that you'd have gone for the mares. But then thinking about it, you could probably understand why they don't want to travel 3 times between Christmas and Cheltenham. It's probably asking a little bit too much of the mare. So, and again, if Brighter Days Ahead isn't lining up at the weekend, it looks to be just a shootout between the 2 Willie Mullins horses, so probably makes sense for us to stay at home. But yeah, it'll be telling. So you're thinking Stateman beats Lossiemouth this weekend?
No, I'm not. I'm playing devil's advocate that let's just imagine Danny Mullins pulls off one of those. Like, it's not an unrealistic expectation to think that Stateman could win, particularly given how Danny Mullins rides him. He's a 9-4 shot. Anzadam's not going to be there. Don't think Brighter Days Ahead rocks up. Nobody else is good enough. So it is a shootout between those two. If Lossiemouth wins it, okay. She shortens for the champion hurdle, ironically, and is clearly the big threat to Constitution Hill, and that will be the horse that Paul Townend rides. But if Stateman goes and does it, I think there's a fair chance that Paul might actually ride Anzadam on the day, because he knows, well, Stateman can't beat Constitution Hill, so let's do something else. But look, that's fancy talk. Anybody who's taken the big prices about Lossiemouth for the champion hurdle doesn't want to hear this fairy tale Doctor Strange alternative reality universe, and it may very well be that Lossiemouth just goes and wins, and it is a straight shootout between those two. If she does win the Irish champion hurdle, and she's 13-8 on with Jeff Banks' bet, if you fancy the reigning champion, the horse who's going for 3 in a row, Stateman, you can get 9-4 with Jeff about him right now. If she does win, I think it's pretty fair to argue that Cheltenham will suit her better, and that
definitely suits her better.
She would be, like, all seriousness aside, like fancy prices about Anzadam to one side, if she wins the Irish champion hurdle, she's a major threat to Constitution Hill. But can you see her turning the form around with him on the day?
I think the track will definitely, I wouldn't say play more to her strengths, than, because you can't say it doesn't suit Constitution Hill. He was unbeaten in 3 starts there, but I would think it suits Lossiemouth more than Kempton would do. But that's easy to say in hindsight, having watched the Christmas hurdle. I was not of the opinion that she would beat Constitution Hill, but I didn't think she'd struggle for pace early on like she did, because I thought she was all about pace, to be honest. This time last year, we were all questioning whether she'd stay in the mare's hurdle, because she's so quick. So it's quick how opinions change. She would probably be the obvious threat then, as you say, and hopefully it's just looking ahead to it. You just hope that I would like to see brighter days ahead. Lossiemouth, Anzadam all take on Constitution Hill. And then for the first time in a good few years, we've got a competitive looking champion hurdle at least.
Who are you siding with right now? If you have to call it now, who is the bet? Not who do you think is going to win? Who is the bet? Lossiemouth, Anzadam, Constitution Hill, brighter days ahead?
I still think if Constitution Hill is anywhere near his best, he will win. Whether I'd be prepared to take twos on at this stage is another matter completely. But if you're asking me the most likely winner, I understand why he's trading the favourites at the minute. Bright days ahead. Again, so we're saying she's unlikely to run at the weekend, so we think. She was good at Christmas. There's no denying that, but I still think she's got to take a big step forward. Personally,
I don't think she'll run.
You still think she'll go the mares?
I believe them when they say that that's what their target is. You don't?
No response. No, I don't. I at this stage, they're not. It's non-committal at the minute, isn't it? It's not. They're not saying they're leaning that way, but unless she does run on Sunday.
Okay, let me ask you this, right? You are hired by Eddie O'Leary to be an advisor to the O'Leary Gigginstown Stud Group. Which horse do you want? Let's say Lossiemouth gets beat, and she goes for the mares to defend her crown. Which horse do you want to take on? Constitution Hill or Lossiemouth?
I'd go Champion Hurdle anyway. You've just won the Grade 1 over Christmas at Leopardstown.
That's not the question. Which horse do you want to take on? Which horse do you fancy your chances of beating more? Constitution Hill or Lossiemouth?
I don't think you should. I think as Lossiemouth won on Sunday. Sorry, in this.
No, in this scenario, she's been beaten and she's going to the mares' hurdle.
Sorry, she's been beaten and she's going to the mares. Well, it depends. You're saying you don't think Constitution Hill's at the best, so he's not at his best anymore. So would you take on Constitution Hill?
I didn't say he's not at his best. I said there's a chance that he's not, and he's not winning his races in the dominant way he used to. And I don't.
Well, you'd say obviously avoiding Constitution Hill is an easier option. End of, isn't it? But I would like to see it in the Champion Hurdle. Whether we get that,
I'd like to see that too. But the mares' hurdle exists, and go back to the start of the season. It's very interesting that Gordon Elliott was saying, "I see her as a Champion Hurdle horse."
Yeah, that's
he hasn't said it since.
Been told to be quiet, has he?
Exactly. That's what I would say.
I don't know. I thought they would, from what they've been saying, they are leaning that way, but it's not. Surely you don't make your decision anyway until after the Irish Champion Hurdle has been made. It's going to be a late call, I would think. 2.5 miles does suit. She is a stayer at the trip, despite having won 3 times over 2 miles this year. I think 2.5 miles will end up being an optimum because you'll end up being a stayer. But the only thing is, if she goes and wins the mares' hurdle, or she even runs well in the Champion Hurdle, she's definitely going to go chasing. She'd be a waste of talent not to go over the fence, I'd say.
Well, they were going to go chasing this season.
Yeah, that's what see, they told us that all summer as well.
So they've already lied once, they're going to lie. Open invitation to Eddie O'Leary to come on the show and tell us exactly what the plan is. Okay, as things stand, I'm breaking the setup here for the microphone. As things stand, I think we put up Anzadam at 20s. I think was the price Adam and I put him up at.
Oh.
I'm pretty happy with that position right now.
When did you back him at 40 to 1?
The day he crossed the line at Ferryhouse, he was 50s. Rishi Prasad, I was talking to Rishi that day. He got 66s.
After the Ferryhouse race?
Yeah.
Or before?
After the Ferryhouse race. He was 66 to 1. I don't know who he got that with, but he got it. And I got 50s. And once he said it, I went to go back him again, and he was 40s, and I backed him at 40s then at 2. So they're the two positions I have. They're the two positions I have on him. And it's like the only anti-post bet that I can cling on to that's worth anything. And it's going up against arguably the greatest hurdler we've ever seen. And it's probably Willie Mullins' third string runner on the team. But hey, there's a chance that he ends up being Willie's number one. There's a small chance. So bear in mind when I'm saying Bridal Days Ahead goes for the Mare's Hurdle, it's in my interest that she goes for the Mare's Hurdle and stays the hell out of Anzadam's way. Let's take a look at the Stayers Hurdle, shall we? Which is one of the worst divisions at the Cheltenham Festival. Teahupoo has consolidated his position as the reigning champion in his absence of just staying in his stable and watching everybody else be a shambles. He's even money with Jeff Banks Bet, home by the Lee, winner at Christmas, and looks to be back to form, to be fair. 7's Lucky Place for Nicky Henderson, 8-1 Hidden Valley Lake, 14's Crambo. Big fan of Fergal O'Brien on this show. Big fan, but that's a rebuilding job now. Gowel Road, who won the Cleve Hurdle, is 14s. Wall Park, 16s. Mystical Power, 20s. That's one I want to come back to. I want to come back to him. And we've got the Galmoy winner in there somewhere as well. Don't see his price, but he's knocking around there somewhere, and he's a fast improving horse. Okay, what do you make of the Stayers Hurdle division? Is this just a case of Teahupoo wins and wins well?
The division as a whole is looking pretty weak and thin on the ground at the minute. Looking overly strong Cleve to begin with before, and I think Strong Leader again underperformed as he had done at Ascot. He ran on a bit like he did in the race last year, not to so much effect. So it'll be interesting to see if he bypasses Cheltenham and waits for Aintree like he did last year. As he said, Crambo was disappointing, and I was actually surprised that he won, because they were banging on about how important it is to him to be fresh. So I thought maybe after Ascot he'd have waited and gone straight to Cheltenham. It wasn't to be the case. Gowel Road's won the Cleve there. I was just going through doing a bit for the book before we came on air, and prior to the Relkeel Hurdle, which was his run previous to the Cleve, he'd been beaten in 6 handicaps off marks ranging from 141 to 145. So that shows you what kind of level he needs to step up to. The handicapper actually only put him up £2 this morning from 146 to 148. His Cleve's best. So he's obviously not taken. He's obviously not been taken by that form either, the handicapper. I think it's a massive step up required for Gowel Road. The one probably to come out of the Cleve looking best is Lucky Place, who beat Gowel Road, giving him £6 in a Relkeel. So that collateral form line makes Nicky Henderson's runner look interesting. Anything I'd say with him is he does look, his run style and the way he finished in the Relkeel suggests that he wants stepping up in trip. But he's yet to. I don't think he's raced beyond 2.5, 4.5. I think is the furthest Lucky Place has gone so far, and his pedigree wouldn't scream out Stayer. But I say on run style, he's definitely worth a chance at it, and probably he looks like the improver who might be able to make up and be involved somewhere along the line. But as for Teahupoo, as you say, he's been shortening all winter without running really. We've only seen him the once. He didn't seem to have a particularly hard race because it was such a slowly run Hatton's Grace. So I thought we might have got to see him again, maybe over Christmas this year. Wasn't to be again. So he's going straight there. And as you say, on all no form, likely to be difficult to beat. Home by the lead, like I say, he's not getting any younger, but does seem to be as good as ever this year. But his record at Cheltenham you would question that slightly.
Yeah, he ran all right in the race last year, but no, he's not for me.
Yeah, I did hear an interview with, and I think JJ Slevin was saying he's got to know him a little bit better now and things, and he thinks maybe he'd have a better chance around Cheltenham, but he's got to take the form literally, and in 2 runs there so far, he hasn't really performed to the level that we've seen him at Leopardstown over Christmas.
I think you look at that betting market, and there's a horse in there that it really doesn't make sense that he's the price he is. I think it's Monmiral at 50s. He was given weight to Gowel Road, and he had to go wide. He had to come around the winner as well. And he's a pretemps winner, as Tony Keenan would say. We've already seen from Sarda Burley that there's very little difference between the staying handicappers, the proper staying handicappers, and the Grade 1 staying hurdlers. If for whatever reason Look, I think Teahupoo wins, but like that's not exactly, again, Oppenheimer levels of intellect to come up with that. He's the even money favourite. He's going to be one of the bankers of the entire meeting, and he's going to be expected to go and win the race. And it's Gordon Elliott, one of the best target trainers in the world. He'll be spot on for this, and he will take the world of beating. So he's going to be a confident one for lucky 63s and doubles, trebles, accumulators, all that kind of stuff. But if you're looking for...
He does have the option of going for the Potemps again, though.
Yeah, he can, and maybe that's what they're going to do with him. But 50-1 about him in what's going to be a strongly run race with a bunch of rubbish he's going up against. That's a mad price, in my opinion. The other one that's very obviously interesting is Mystical Power, but he has been awful in his 2 runs this season. Stepping up to 3 miles, it worked with poor old Ingles Drever. Could it work with this fella?
Don't think he's in English Drivers League, to be honest, but we have seen it. There's quite a few down the years with decent 2 mile form. If they don't look like being champion hurdlers, they'll step up to 3 miles. The race, I thought maybe with him just having such a disappointing season, maybe they'd try and get him back on track and look to go back to Aintree where he won maybe for the Aintree hurdle over 2.5. He'd have 2 options at Aintree, 3 miles, but obviously his pedigree, being out of any power, would suggest that going up in distance might help unlock some further improvement. Just going back to Monmiral, he was put up £4 this morning to a mark of 149. So if he was to go down the handicap route, he'd be racing off a mark of 149, and he is qualified. So, like you say, it might be that they look at that and think, in an open year, Teahupoo aside, he was second to strong leader earlier in the year, wasn't he? At Newbury when he ran quite well as well. So perhaps that maybe they'll be tempted to have a go at the stairs.
What did he win the Potemps off of last year? 138. 149 is probably going to be a bit too much for him. They might do it. They might go for it. I suspect Nichols is going to want to take a tilt at a grade 1 with him. That strong leader has become real disappointing as well. My goodness. For a horse that travels as well as he does and promised as much as he did, it has not happened. At all. Bitterly disappointing with him. Rocky's Diamond, what did you make of him?
Again, a little bit. He's definitely improving. Again, he franked the home by the leaf form, didn't he, from Christmas by coming out and winning the Galmoy. I thought noticeably a few of the horses from the long walk at Ascot have struggled to back that up again. Strong leader came out of that race. Obviously, Hidden Valley Lake didn't run his race. I didn't think he'd have been another I'd have probably been looking at. Thinking about the Liverpool hurdle where he ran well last year, finished third behind strong leader, but thought he was a little bit disappointing again in the Galmoy. So again, quite what that form amounts to remains to be seen. But he certainly seems to be on an upward curve. But even so, he's got ground to make up with home by the Lee as well. So again, it's hard to get away from Teahupoo as unoriginal as it is at this stage. But I say Lucky Place is probably the one who's tried to put his head above water and make up into a second season hurdler who could make an impact. And I would say now it's unlikely that we'll see him again. He'll probably be going straight there. I would have thought if he didn't go to Cleve. Can't really see Nicky running him anyway. I'd be amazed if he went to Haydock for the Rendlesham hurdle in February on background. So I would expect him to go straight to Cheltenham and be trying 3 miles for the first time. Well,
I could be wrong about this, but I have a feeling that Ian Abrams, my colleague on TalkSport 2, asked him that question, and he said we're going to go there. Yeah, I don't want to put out any misinformation, but I have a feeling that's in my mind.
I'd be amazed if he didn't, because I say the only option, just thinking off the top of my head now, would be the Rendlesham that used to be at Kempton's, now a Haydock, usually on background in mid-February. It's not conducive to an ideal preparation before the Stayers hurdle. So
yeah,
and stepping up and trip if they're unsure about it, go there and find out on the day.
Yeah, it wouldn't exactly be ideal conditions really for a prep for a Stayers hurdle when you're going up against one of the best in the game in Teahupoo. Does he win? Jeff Banks will give you even money right now that Gordon Elliott's reigning Stayers hurdle champion can go and do it again. I think he will. I think he'll win it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't even have to do any more than he's done in the past two runs of the race, to be honest. So.
All you're doing is betting on Gordon Elliott to have a horse fit for the day. And I'd be pretty confident that Gordon Elliott can achieve that in his sleep. So yeah, Teahupoo's going to win. Unless Mystical Power takes a massive step forward for a genius in Willie Mullins. And he might. And I thought the interview he gave Emma Nagel the other day was pretty interesting. He was He sounded pretty optimistic about him going up in trip. He sounded way more optimistic than you just did. So that 20-1 could look big between now and Stayers Hurdle Day. 20-1 Mystical Power with Jeff Banks bet. Even money Teahupoo, the reigning champion, and 20-1 about Rocky's Diamond as well. You can take advantage of those prices by using the promo code FFP500, which will let you be eligible for 10% of any net losses back after your first month of betting, up to £500 plus best odds guaranteed. British and Irish racing streaming live on the Jeff Banks site. Loads of goodies, loads of money back offers, loads of sort of incentives and all kinds of things. Plus you're betting against a bookmaker who's using his opinion, not an algorithm. Jeff Banks bet. Use your promo code FFP500. Sign up now in time for the Cheltenham Festival to take full advantage of all the goodies on the Jeff Banks website. Anybody that stands out to you as an anti-post bet for the Stayers Hurdle right now, Paul Ferguson?
No, not as the market stands at the minute. I say again, Teahupoo's the most likely winner, but Lucky Place maybe as one who could be the improver, but I'd want a bit bigger than 8-1 to be honest. Yeah,
I agree. Look, we're on the Brown Advisory. We've switched to the Brown Advisory. So we saw Dancing City win at the weekend. He beat Bioluminescence, or some Fascinated By, but it's a second win over fences for Dancing City. He's a multiple Grade 1 winner over hurdles, winner at the DRF, winner at Aintree, winner at Punchestown, ran well at Cheltenham. Is he actually the horse who should be favourite for the Brown Advisory? And is the reason that he's not because Ballyburn has such a big reputation? And does Ballyburn deserve that reputation anymore?
Strictly on what we've seen over fences, it'd probably be between him and the Jukebox Man. I wasn't overly blown away by Ballyburn on debut. And certainly...
Well, you didn't think he looked like Sprinter Sacra on debut?
Ballyburn, no, he didn't. No, he definitely didn't. And then obviously he ran into Sagino, who we just don't know how good he could be. Could be that he was facing probably in time will show that he was facing an impossible task, running against Sagino over 2 miles on decent ground around Kenton. And he was just out on his feet a little bit when he made the mistake at the last. So it'll be interesting to see him over the weekend. I'm assuming he will go for the 2 mile 5. What used to be the Dr. PJ Moriarty
at
Leopardstown. I'm assuming we'll see him there. So I remain to be convinced on that one. As for what we have seen in a positive note of events this year, both the Jukebox Man and, as you say, Dancing City. I thought Dancing City jumped really well on Sunday. I thought it was just like a controlled, efficient performance from him. I thought throughout the whole race he was going to win. And he beat a really good mare there. I think she's good. The race conditions didn't suit Bioluminescence though in any way, because she was actually having to give £1 to Dancing City, whereas if they meet in a Grade 1, she'd obviously be receiving £7. So that penalty she picked up because she won a Grade 2 on debut at Limerick was a bit of a hindrance to her. She travelled well in behind. She'll have the option of coming back to the mare's chase a distance 2.5, albeit she's obviously a novice. Novices have done well in that already. The question with her would be whether she is completely ground dependent and she does need soft or even worse ground. So that might be a concern with her, but she's definitely one to take. I think it will be a strong piece of form. This, I say, she's good enough to take on the boys. I think at Grade 1 level again. Back to Dancing City. He's done a little wrong, really, has he? I think a few people were perhaps a little bit underwhelmed by him at Punchestown first time out, but he was well beaten on his hurdles debut last year, and I think he noted that he was a bit of a stuffy horse who took a bit of time.
Yeah.
And he seemed to take a step forward from that. I thought it was a more than satisfactory chasing debut. Anyway, he was again, he was quite efficient. Doesn't seem to waste much time in the air, which I like. Goes there now with leading claims. Obviously, as we say, he ran well last year. Got a bit of ground to make up with the Jukebox Man on running in the Albert Bartlett. Not sure he'd give his run that day, Dancing City, to be honest. He reversed that form at Aintree and then obviously reversed the form with the winner, Stella Story, at Punchestown, which highlighted what a constitution horse must have, because after running the Dublin Racing Festival, he ran in Grade 1s, as you said, at Cheltenham, Aintree and Punchestown in a short amount of time, winning 2 of them, 3 of them when you include the Nathaniel Lacey at the Dublin Racing Festival. He's done little wrong. The one thing I would say is, anyone following trends, Dancing City goes there on the back of 2 runs, as does the Jukebox Man. There's only been 2 winners this century who've won the race on the back of 2 runs, so whether inexperience is a slight concern for them. The others being Don Poley and the Real Whacker. Before that, Florida Pearl was the last one to win the Broadway on the back of 2 runs. But it seems to be more and more the case these days in the Novice Hurdlers and Novice Chasers that we do see them less frequently. And I would say his jumping hasn't really giving it any concerns at this stage to think that it might be an issue. And I wouldn't imagine it'd be a huge field. So I'd be positive about him going there with leading claims.
Yeah, not for me, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, look, fine. He's fine. He's grand. I think he's a very, very nice horse. I'm expecting Ballyburn to win at the weekend. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm putting a little bit too much stock in him. I remember what Ballyburn did as a bumper horse to Dancing City. And I know that you can look at the Supreme Novice from last season and go, geez, that was... The reason I'm mentioning the Supreme Novice is because he's beaten Slade Steele at the Dublin Racing Festival. Slade Steele wins the Supreme. He beats Mystical Power and he beats Firefox. And all those horses have disappointed in various different guises this season. Slade Steele probably hasn't lost a whole lot in defeat in hindsight, considering the horses who beat him have gone on to win subsequently and win at a higher grade. So actually, he's probably performed okay. Mystical Power isn't fast enough for those 2-mile hurdles, and we'll see what he can do up and trip. And I think Sergino is a monster. And running him over 2 miles on a flat track at Kempton is not what they would have done had the HRI not gotten rid of the 2-mile Grade 1 Novice Chase at Leopardstown. That's where he would have run. Probably would have won it. And then probably would have been obliterated in the Arkle by Sergino. So they've done them a favour in the end. Ultimately, I'm keeping the faith with Ballyburn. But I'm fascinated by the division. You've got Ballyburn, Dancing City, Impaire Passe, Il Atlantique. Good luck with him over 3 miles. Not a hope. You wouldn't get in a horse box, and I don't.
He said last week that if he run after assuming he's beaten by Madgeborough at the weekend, he said he's unlikely to go, and he'll wait for the 2.5 at Aintree or Fairyhouse.
Yeah. By the way, he might beat Madgeborough. Maybe he will, but I'm convinced. I am absolutely convinced he's a bottle job. And we'll see it at the DRF. But he's there. Lecky Watson, Champ Kiley, Key de Bourbon. You see where I'm going with this? Chapeau de Soleil. These are all Willie Mullins horses.
Yeah.
So there's no... Jesus, that was a lot of balloons. There's no Turners. There's no National Hunt Chase anymore. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with all of these. We're going to see Impaire Passe in Sandown, and I'm starting to think we might actually see him at Cheltenham, despite the fact that Willie Mullins was saying at Limerick at the Faugheen that no, he won't go to Cheltenham. There's no suitable race.
Yeah, I thought he'd be one who'd wait for Aintree or the Fairyhouse race, the Grade 1s over 2.5. But I was watching an interview with Anthony Bromley yesterday. He's obviously racing manager to Sam Mooney and Isaac Swade, and he was kind of leaning that Willie would want to go and try and stretch his stamina out in this race. So be interesting to see how he gets on at the weekend, whether he runs a Sandown or Leopardstown. Obviously a high-class hurdler gone chasing. Again, I wasn't blown away by him on debut, but I was more impressed with him at Limerick. I think he definitely had more of a turning foot than many of these horses. Django Byers in there, obviously he goes to Sandown as well. So that the 2 races this weekend are going to be quite informative in terms of usually what would have been the Gold Miller, but obviously that option is not there for the horses now. So should, in theory, have made the Arkle and this race, but I think it's actually going to make this race a bit more competitive this year. But as you say, Willie's got that many there. Il Atlantique, Lecky Watson, probably both 2.5 milers, really. They might go elsewhere. Key de Bourbon, I believe, goes straight to this race on the back of having won at Goran on Thursday's day. His jumping would need to brush up, I would think, at this level. He wasn't particularly good in that department at Leopardstown. I actually thought he'd done well to finish as close as he did. He was better at Goran, but he will need to brush up again. And he's got no graded race experience whatsoever, be it ovals or fences, which is unusual for one of Willie's, that he wasn't pitched in at all last year. He obviously ran well in the Martin Pipe, and then went to Ayr for a small race, which he won. But I do think the step up to 3 miles will suit him, but it could be that this race, again, he's lacking experience going down on the back of two runs in beginner's chase. I think maybe this race will make a man of him, and he might be more of interest later in the spring at either Aintree or Punchestown in one of the 3 mile races.
That race is screaming out for something to step forward. Maybe Better Days Ahead is the worst they can do it.
I think one horse who's been underestimated this season and continues to be is Croke Park. We obviously, the problem over Christmas was the fog. The visibility was just that bad. We didn't really get to see. But people were using him to beat the stick at the Drimore Novice Chase format. Actually, I think he's pretty. I think he's improved dramatically for going chasing, and he stays well. So I think he's one that seems to have just been continually underestimated in the market all year and being knocked for some reason. I
agree. I completely agree with you. The bet that comes out of that race from the weekend for me is Bioluminescence for the Mare's Chase. 8-1 with Jeff Banks. I think that's big.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think Gavin's got the other good novice mare there, Only by Night. She's entered in the Scilly Isles as well, isn't she? So
she is.
It could be a really informative weekend. That's definitely a market you'd want to look at with them three at the top, because Dino Blue, again, still a suspect stayer at the trip, really, that outstayed last year. Impervious, we don't know. Really don't know where she is. I haven't not seen her for so long. Allegory de Vassi.
Oh my God.
She's had enough chances, really, in weaker renewals of that race. So,
if I start talking about Allegory de Vassi for this race, slap me in the face, Paul. Yeah. That invitation is for Paul Ferguson only, because he's in Liverpool and can't really do it. Nobody else is allowed to do that.
I'd be with you there. I'd be interested in Bioluminescence or Only by Night there, but say the problem with her, I do think she's a little bit ground dependent, in that she would need a minimum of soft ground. But I think she's good, and she was. It's worth remembering that she was trying to concede Dancing City a pound there. Say if they met, for instance, if they'd have met this week at the Dublin Racing Festival, she'd have been getting £7. So she comes out well at the race, really. And even back in third, Goodland, he's had his 3 runs now. I wonder if they'll consider giving him an entry in the new Novice Handicap Chase.
Yes, Paul.
They won it. Obviously, Barry Connell won it a few years ago with Tully East, and he was trained by Alan Fleming, I think it was, at the time. So possibly he's one for there. I think he's got an IHRB mark of 144, I think, over fences. 144. So add a couple of pounds and you'll be fine now, because there's no upper ceiling in that race anymore. It used to be an 0-1-5 contest, but there's no upper ceiling now. So as you can see there's a few high class horses in there. Slade Steele, we need to see him again. And I just thought with him, I was a bit concerned with him not being entered in the beginner's chase at Goran last week, whether he might have had a setback or something. I haven't heard anything, but the fact that he'd be leaving it late to win a beginners to get qualified, if that is something to think about.
Is he going to the DRF?
Don't think he's not entered, is he? I think he's got any entries.
Was he not entered? I'm going to select the name No Flies on Him for our YouTube viewers with no comment. I just present to you No Flies on Him, but no comment to be made. Leave a comment, by the way, below if you're having an anti-post bet on the Cheltenham Festival and you were either in agreement with what Paul and I have said so far, or you're taking us on. We'd like to hear from you. Who do you fancy for the Cheltenham Festival? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Goodland is 16s for the Novices Handicap Chase with Jeff Banks bet, and I think that is... I'm not putting it up as a recommendation, but I think it's an interesting price at least, and that's probably going to turn out to be pretty good form. Bioluminescence, though, is a bet, in my opinion, and she will feature in some kind of elaborate multiple for the Cheltenham Festival. I think that 8-1 is more than fair.
Yeah, Gorgeous Tom would be an interesting one there as well, if depending on what rating he gets. And I think he'd be interesting somewhere in the spring on some nice ground. I think he wants better ground. Again, came out of that Drimore Novice Chase where he finished well. I think 2.5 on decent grounds what he's been crying out for. So he'd been interested. There's plenty at the top of that market, I'd say. Obviously, Jaguar aside, I'll touch on him later when we come to our eye catchers the weekend. But
yeah,
Django Bay, I would imagine, will have loftier targets to say. Don't know what's going on with Slade Steele at the moment. He hasn't got any entries at the DRF. In the water side, would need to run twice more before the weights are announced on the 23rd of February to be eligible. So that's pushing it now.
Yeah, Paul.
He was entered in the novice handicap at Cheltenham, but wasn't qualified last weekend. So,
yeah, Paul.
Ginkgo Blue, would imagine, will be going, again, graded company. Caliph de Burley will have options. So that market could be right to have a little look further down.
I'll say this, at least Paul Nicholls will give interviews to the media and isn't looking for payment for them, unlike his former assistant trainer. Anyway, moving swiftly along, that is our look at the Novice Chasers. Is there, aside from Bioluminescence, who I'm putting up, is there anybody that you would be recommending as a bet right now for the Novice Chase division, based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks?
And I just didn't, I say in that Brown Advisory or Broadway, to give it its official title, I do like both the Dancing City and the Jukebox Man, and there's probably not that much between them. So I'll be interested to see what Ballyburn does. If he goes and wins well, he's gonna shorten. I would imagine the only way they go these days. Did you see that yesterday in the Mares Novice Hurdle when Maury, who I thought was ridiculously short before the race, wins, gets shortened, but then they also shortened 6.5 as well. It's like, you can't have both ways, surely.
Oh no, they can. The big corp bookmakers absolutely can. That's what they want. So,
interesting.
And that's why racing is in such a vulnerable position at the moment. Anyway, didn't know what to make of that, and I'm glad you brought it up. Triumph Hurdle division. So we saw East India Dock at the weekend win the Triumph Hurdle trial. Katie Young wasn't overly enthusiastic about it. She just has an overall concern about the form of that race, and we've seen the likes of Apple Shakira and horses like that disappoint in it, but Defi Desoy took it before going on to win at the Cheltenham Festival. I thought it was a very impressive performance. Hello Neighbour will see at the DRF along with St. Lucie and Lady Vega Allen, who pushed him close. Palladium was whelming, not overwhelming, not underwhelming, just whelming on his debut. And then there's Lulamba, who was, he was outrageously good for Nicky Henderson. So, of the Triumph Hurdle division right now, betting on screen with Jeff Banks Bet, what are your thoughts, Paul Ferguson?
I think on what we've seen so far, the stronger form, well, maybe not stronger forms, probably not the right word, but the two who've really stood out, obviously this side of the Irish Sea. Lulamba being first last weekend at Ascot, as you say. I thought he travelled powerfully, looked professional, jumped well. And probably the most pleasing thing about the performance for me was how strong he was through the line. After jumping the last really well, he just pulled clear. Hard race to work out in terms of form, because a lot of people are saying, he beat 110 rated flat horse from France, but he pulled his chance away surely to be to fully justify giving himself a chance of winning the race. But Lulamba was giving him £10 on the other end, so could do no more than win as he did. I would imagine we're not going to see him again now, so he'll go there without any graded race experience. Because Nicky Henderson, I think, is going to send Palladium to the Adonis.
Yes.
Said he needs a bit more practice, which looked the case. I wasn't taken with him at all, really, at Huntingdon, to be honest. He's got the right kind of background as well. He's obviously only had the 2 career starts with Lamba, 1 being in France, and 8 of the past 10 Triumph Hurdle winners had run in France before moving to Britain or Ireland. So the precocious French types and French breds do particularly well in juvenile hurdles. So he has got the right background for that. Whereas East India Dock, on the other hand, come off the flat. But equally, I was impressed with him again on Saturday, as I was in November when he won on an old course. Didn't think that was a strong race at all, the previous race he won. But I thought he was good on Saturday, and I think he just kept it simple by making the run. But I think I would expect him to improve on better ground and in a strongly run race when he can take a lead. Just by the way he travels, I think he's an enthusiastic goer. I imagine the two of them travelling strongly off the pace in a Triumph Hurdle. Both of them jump well. He was handed a mark this morning of 142 by the BHA. which would probably be a little bit below what is normally needed to win a Triumph Hurdle. It doesn't, Lulamba aside, perhaps doesn't look, certainly doesn't look as strong a year maybe as last year. But if you go back to last year's Finesse, which was won on Trials Day, Sergino won that obviously, and he was only rated 145 after it. So, and he did pull a long way clear. I think he pulled 10 lengths clear of Stencil in the end. I think he'd probably be worth noting from Saturday's race as well. Stencil,
Yeah,
looked like he'd won. I like the stride he had on him. He moved well, and he probably wants that, at least that soft ground, if not worse. But he's probably going to get a mark in the low 130s, so I suspect that he'd be Boodle's Fred Winterbound. Whereas the winner really was in a different league to the opposition and won as you would have liked him to if you're a fan of him for the Triumph Hurdle. Again, DRF's going to be hugely significant in terms of if any of the Irish horses can step up and stand up, not just win in the manner of like an obvious contender. Really, you got three there. I assume are all going to run. Hello Neighbour narrowly beat Lady Vega Allen over Christmas. Both I would expect entitled to come on for the run. St. Lucie was impressive. I thought Punchestown didn't beat much, but visually was impressive. And again, she's one who'd got the profile of previous winners of the Triumph in that she had a run in, obviously in France the previous spring. So that'll be a fascinating race. The Spring Juvenile Hurdle, which in recent years has certainly been the best guide towards the Triumph.
yeah, for sure. Palladium has the potential to improve significantly from first to second start, and the Adonis, at least historically, has been a good guide, particularly for Nicky Henderson horses. I'm not underestimating the fact that he could, especially seeing as Nicky immediately said after the race, the Adonis is next, that this is the plan. And it could turn out that runner-up Wolf Moon is going to turn out to be a real good horse as well. But he didn't look like a £1.4 million purchase.
No, he drifted alarmingly beforehand, which was strange considering. But yeah, I just wasn't massively taken with him personally. He might go and win the Adonis, and then he'll probably have a crack here because I think his owners, the Bamfords, or I think they're something to do with JCB.
Yeah, they sponsor it. Yeah, they're involved in the ownership of the company.
Otherwise, given his speed, you would think he'd be probably one, and being a flat horse, he'd probably be one for Aintree, really. And the Adonis does tend to be more of a pointer towards the anniversary at Aintree than it does in recent years, anyway, than the Triumph. But he'll go there. I would think that after the DRF, if one steps forward, there could be that we're looking at 3 standout performance, 3 or 4 towards the top of the market. I wouldn't put anyone off either of the top 2. I don't think they've done anything wrong. I say Lulamba's probably got more scope to improve, having only had them 2 career starts, whereas East India Doc's now run 14 times and run 11 times on the flat. And I say, just wait and see if one of those Hello Neighbour or the 2 Willie Mullins trained fillies, I'd probably be looking towards them. Willie's had a good record with fillies in recent years.
Yeah.
In juvenile hurdles, as we've seen, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of those was able to step forward and win the Spring at the weekend. Yeah,
I'm very interested in what St. Lucie does at the weekend, but there was a savage amount of talk about Hello Neighbour before he ran at Christmas. And the original talking point was he was going to run in a maiden hurdle. And then Gavin Cromwell throws him into a graded race on debut and he goes and wins. So how much improvement is there to come from him? Like, that's really interesting. But you're still waiting for that Willie Mullins juvenile hurdler to emerge, and the DRF has been the big guide, and that's where Majborough made his debut last year and then stepped forward to win the Triumph Hurdle. So given the fact that Willie has won 4 of the last 5 Triumph Hurdles, you kind of can't help but look at his ones as where the one is going to emerge if you're looking for value in the market right now.
Yeah, possibly. I say you shouldn't underestimate Hello Neighbour. As you say, he was making his debut, giving away experience, hurdling experience, and coming off the flat. So, yeah, that'll be a fascinating race. Probably one of the more informative races over the weekend, I would have said.
Yeah, big time. Big time. Who appeals to you right now as your likely winner of the race, and who appeals to you as a bet?
As I say, that I think neither of the top 2 have done anything wrong. Just in terms of visual performance, I was probably slightly more taken with Lulamba at Ascot. East India Doc has got that course form, and he's done a little wrong. I say it just the way he goes through his race. I think he could If the ground was decent, I think he could improve a fair bit. So I think a lot will depend on the ground. As for the marks at the minute, I wouldn't look to have a bet, because I say I think it could change considerably if you get a really impressive winner at Leopardstown, for example. I would think that the top two, certainly Lulamba, wouldn't be that short come the day. So I'd be sitting and holding fire for now.
Yeah. If you're somebody who's got 20-1 about Lulamba,
yeah, you're all right, yeah.
Well done. Nicely played. If you're somebody who's got 20-1 about Lulamba. But if you're looking to back him now, I think you just wait till closer to the day. He couldn't possibly be shorter. And remember what happened with Sergino last year. Proceed with caution.
Match Pro was pretty weak on the day, wasn't he? Sure, last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Right.
Yeah, he was.
That's often the way now. Like, you're looking at these markets, they're a lot more competitive on the day. Come Cheltenham week, and if you like a short price, when you're better waiting until near the time.
Well, if you remember, I'm pretty certain there was big market support for Salvatore Mundi. Did he go off 17-2 or something like that?
Yeah, he went off in single figures, yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to know. Sometimes the betting market makes sense. Sometimes it's a complete guess up. Let's look at the betting for the Gold Cup, shall we? After Lampresse's win at Cheltenham. Ironically enough, it's a Gold Cup trial, but it's a Gold Cup trial that's got a woeful record of producing Gold Cup winners. It hasn't really since 19-dickety-doo.
2000, I think, or was it 2000? Looks like trouble.
Wait, I was going to say it was Paul Nicholls' horse, wasn't it? Yeah, great, excellent.
No chance. Looked like trouble.
Yeah. Sorry, no chance, of course. Yeah. Who was I thinking of from Paul Nicholls' yard? The King George winner. Oh, Paul, bail me out. Who was that?
Seymour Business.
Thank you. That was in my head, but looks like trouble was the one I did.
Looks like trouble.
Anyway, Lampresse 16-1. It was fine. It was a good performance. Nice to see Stage Star run well. He's going to go to Aintree, but nobody's looking at that performance and thinking, "Oh yeah, what a threat to Galopin Des Champs."
No, I think that's fair. He was actually getting £4 from Stage Star as well. So Stage Star does come out to the race with credit and seem to appreciate the step up and trip. Left alone on a mark 163 today, which just about sums it up, really. He's about a stone behind Galopin Des Champs. And that is what he needs to find. And interestingly, he did win the Broadway, the Brown Advisory, as it now is, in 2022. But since then, in Open Grade 1 company, Lampresse is 0 from 4. So just probably, whilst he's a high-class chaser, obviously, probably just below the very top level. I don't think he'll. I think he actually probably struggled to improve upon last year's run, because it's possibly at this stage looking a stronger Gold Cup.
Well, it's a stronger Gold Cup in the sense that Galopin
potentially Ian Galopin Des Champs in the same vein of form, and hopefully Factor File runs well enough at the weekend against Galopin Des Champs to justify his place in the field and not be rerouted to the Ryanair.
I mean, right now, Galopin is bidding to be the 5th 3-time winner of the Gold Cup in the 100th running of the race. And you'd be hard-pressed to think he won't do it. But maybe Factor File is one of those Willie Mullins horses that for one reason or another just didn't perform over Christmas and he didn't run quite to his level.
I thought he ran reasonably well.
I thought he did too, but if you're trying to come up with an excuse as to why he didn't get as close to him as you would have liked, maybe you can lean into that. I think there's a possibility Factor File gets closer to him this weekend. I'd be surprised if he beats him. And if you can't beat him in Leopardstown over 3 miles, how the hell do you beat him over 3 miles, 2.5 in the Gold Cup?
People say that Galopin Des Champs nigh on him, unbeatable around Leopardstown. So I get the trip thing, but like saying if you can't beat him around Leopardstown, I think Galopin Des Champs probably as effective at Leopardstown as he is everywhere else.
Yeah, more
so. So again, I would probably envisage a similar outcome at the weekend in the Irish Gold Cup, but I say hopefully Fact File's close enough to warrant his place in the Gold Cup field, because it would be a shame if he didn't. I believe Bambridge is going to go to this year, which I was slightly surprised. I thought he'd have been going for the Ryanair. But again,
I was surprised by that too. But to be fair to them, look, well done to them. He's a Gold Cup
and
winner.
that makes sense.
Sorry, he's a King George winner. You should be going for a Gold Cup. But the obvious race is the Ryanair. But it's more going to be ground dependent than trip, really, for Banbridge. If he gets his ground, then he'd be a big player.
I think they make a good point there, because he doesn't run anywhere if it's soft ground. So it's not saying soft will go back in trip, and soft he wouldn't run in the Ryanair anyway. So fair play, yeah. Good to see it having a crack at the race. Jerry Colombo, we haven't seen for a while, probably going to go there straight. Monty Star, I was a little bit underwhelmed with. Personally, Tremor on New Year's Day and has come back, so it'll be interesting if he does run to see if he steps forward, because Henry wouldn't be in the greatest form at the moment. Monty Star's actually one who I had an eye on for the Grand National. Doesn't seem like they're going that way. If he runs at the weekend, he will have had, that will be his 6th start, which you need, obviously 6 runs to be eligible. So it'll be interesting to see if he runs and is well beaten, whether they have a rethink and maybe think about Aintree rather than the Gold Cup. But probably the way for another day. Corbett's Cross goes straight there, I think. As you said, long press, I'd be surprised if it was good enough. LA Francais likely to drop in trip. So yeah, again, another key race this weekend in the Irish Gold Cup.
Well, Monty Star will have to turn it around with Embassy Gardens as well, who is an intended runner for this race. But by the sounds of things, Ryanair would be more his thing.
And Embassy Gardens is Embassy Gardens?
Yeah.
I thought he stayed well last time, actually, to be honest. I thought he sorted out really well. And I'd be more interested in him at a big price if he went there fresh and didn't run beforehand, because he seems to go well, and his form kind of tailed off a little bit at the end of last season. So,
well, the quote from Willie Mullins on New Year's Day was, I'm paraphrasing, it was something along the lines of, maybe we've been making a mistake with this horse, running him in the potato race and the national hunt, that actually he might be better over going forward from the front over intermediate trips.
Possible, yeah, possible. I still think he's quite a good horse, to be honest, Embassy Gardens.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I like him.
I would imagine Jungle Boogie goes for the Ryanair.
At the grand old age of 17, but still going strong.
Yeah. He was good at Ascot, to be fair, and considering how much ground he gave away with his jumping. So, and he did run well in the Gold Cup last year. So
yeah,
it's just been a bit of a fragile horse over the years, hasn't he? So back to matters in hand. Long press, say admirable performance at the weekend, but I think he's just below that top level that would be needed here.
Who appeals to you as the threat to Galop on the Champ?
Factor Files, the obvious one, but like you say, trying to make a reason as to why he can bridge that gap remains to be seen. And say the one at bigger odds here, you're highlighting Corbett's Cross. They're probably Corbett's Cross or Embassy Gardens. I'm probably more interested in one of those two in terms of a place, in terms of trying to hit the frame, and then those just behind, and the top two in the market.
I have a sneaky feeling Corbett's Cross is going to run a real big race in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But he'd be ridden to come through horses as well, won't he? So the race should be run to suit him, because I imagine there'll be a fair bit of pacing. Grey Dawn, I'd just be a bit concerned that Haydock left the mark on him, and then similarly Kempton. So it'd take a bit of mastery from Dan Skelton to get him back, I would think. I still think I don't know whether he really wants this extreme test neither, because the way he went through the Haydock race suggests that like a bare 3 miles might be to his liking, but I can understand why he didn't show his best at Kempton on the back of that run of Haydock, because he did have a hard race there. And I just think the Betfair now is becoming.
Oh, why would you do it, Paul? Why would you do it?
I know people want to see horses, and we all do, but
not that race.
Gold Cup campaign in bad ground, the Haydock, just for me is probably not the ideal way to go, in my opinion.
There's a reason that Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins aren't targeting that race, and it's not because Gordon is very busy at that time of the year, very active. I don't think it's a good race to go for at all. Not if you have a Gold Cup horse. Absolutely not. Stay well clear of that race, in my opinion. I hope Josh isn't listening, because Josh Apiafi was involved in coming up with that race. And back in the day, it was great, but these days, no. Stay well clear of that. I think Corbett's Cross is the each way play in the race. He's a new form line. he didn't run his race at Kempton. He needs to build up, but it's Emmet Mullins. The guy's a genius at getting horse ready. And because he's a new form line, there's a chance if he's ridden cold by, I imagine, Derek O'Connor, maybe he can stay on. But I don't think anything can beat Galop on Le Champ. And the final question for you about this race is Fact to File. So there's a narrative out there now that, Fact to File is going to go for the Ryanair. I don't see what the point of JP McManus having 2 runners in the Ryanair chase is and only 1 runner in the Gold Cup. And I don't see him switching.
I don't, unless he's like kicked into the ground by Galop and Deschamps for the weekend, maybe. But I see the argument. Like, I think it's more as well to do with how he races, how he goes through the race as well, because he's still quite keen in the early parts of the race, which he needs to settle down. Like, but as I've said, I much prefer to see him. Hopefully, he runs well the weekend, and I much to prefer to see him in the Gold Cup. Yeah,
well said. Bear in mind, I got Fact to File. George Gorman, Katie Young, and I got Fact to File so right and yet horribly wrong on this show last year. The 3 of us were adamant. He's going to go for the Turners. He's going to run on the Turners, and we've got all the fancy prices. And he didn't. So maybe they'll go Ryanair. Maybe they will. If he gets battered, that they might just go wave the white flag. We can't beat Galopin. Let's go there. But I think it's more likely JP would have 2 in the Gold Cup and 1 in the Ryanair, and we know Splans Tower's going Ryanair. So let's see. Okay. Any other business? Starting with Jaguar.
Yeah, I like Jaguar. I've liked them all year. We actually sponsored the race. He won that Banger, which form has worked out really well. Where he beat Lowry's bar, come out and won his next 2, then ran second to Jinko Blue at Windsor. Jinko Blue had obviously beaten Jaguars, also the form tied in. At Uttoxeter, when Jaguar travelled really well, was probably up against the graded horse. Really would have finished second, but for a fairly serious mistake at the last. Ran in the time form Novice handicap on Saturday off a mark of 132. Won really impressively. He's gone up £7 today to 139, which would be ideal for him in the Novice handicap chase. He has actually had the 4 run, so he would be qualified to run in the plate as well. So if connections look at it and some of those Irish novices who look like grade 1 performers lurking are in there, maybe they will have a look at the plate as well. I would imagine he'll get an entry in both, but I would think, given that he is 6-1 favourite, that the Novice handicap chase will be his race, and I think he'll go there with strong claims. The other eye catcher, well, call him an eye catcher, if you like, coming from Sandown on Friday. I just want to mention a horse of Harry Derham's called Il Va de Soi. Ran in the 2.5 mile handicap hurdle and was beaten in second off a mark of 122. He was left alone today. I just think he'd been off since the October meeting. Maybe shaped like he needed to run a little bit. Harry's hasn't exactly been in great form of late, so I think when he turns the corner, he does want soft ground under similar conditions. He can probably win a handicap hurdle before he goes chasing next year.
Just confirm that name for us. You're kind of drifted over.
Il Va de Soi. Okay. Great horse of Harry.
To be fair, Harry's gallop was washed away for quite a few months.
Yeah, it was, but he came back right away and had to hit the ground running, and then his form's been a bit disappointing. Actually, he's got a mare who I think's well handicapped running at Newcastle today called Ascend and Lark. So it's actually a half sister to Romeo Coolio, running off a mark of 113, unbeaten in 2 starts at Wordle. So I'll be interested to see how she goes, because I expect her to go well. And he did have a couple of horses finish second at the weekend, of course. Brentford Hope being one of them. So maybe they're just about to turn the corner, which would be good to see. And this horse is probably one to know as an handicap hurdle when that happens. We probably should have touched upon the Novice hurdle, shouldn't we? With 6 Mile Bridge beating Passe's Charm. 6 Mile Bridge went up £14 today to mark 142. He was receiving £5 from Passe's Charm, who I thought didn't run to form. I was actually amazed this time last Monday when the entries were coming through that he was even entered, because after he won at Aintree, it was like he's going straight there, which made sense because he made his hurdles debut in September.
Paul, what were they doing?
4 times, maybe in hindsight. Now I think Willie said yesterday in hindsight probably wasn't the right thing to do. I was already thinking, even if he won on Saturday, I was thinking having 5 runs between September and January, like, we're all for wanting to see horses, and we don't want to be playing down the fact and saying it's a bad move running them. But when it comes to the spring festivals, you're meeting the likes of Willie, whose horses are on the up and have been trained specifically to improve through the season. It's difficult for those horses, I think. So he ran flat. I thought they wanted to take out the race.
How does he win? Sorry, how does he win the Turners now?
Well, take some. The only thing I would say is positive for anyone, again, who follows trends. Like the last two winners of the Turners who ran in that classic trial were both beaten. The last one being the new one for Nigel Twiston-Davies. So he finished second to our Fisher's Cross, who went on and won the Albert.
He won the potato race as well, yeah.
Don't think it's the same strength of form, to be honest. So.
No, and he ran all the way to the line, the new one.
Yeah, of course he did, yeah. I'd just be a bit concerned about him now, but they've got, 8 weeks to get him right, 7 weeks.
Listen, this is one of the things I'll say about, and I don't think Nigel Twiston-Davies is part of that. Maybe he is. I don't know. You and I were saying beforehand we thought it was an April Fool's joke when Peter Saville came out and said, "Well, we want trainers to be paid for their interviews." That's going to breed resentment, and I tell you what else it's going to do. It's going to result in more hostile interviews, because if there's one common theme on X, it's criticism for the media over soft interviews for trainers and jockeys. Oh, you're not asking about the running and riding of this horse. You don't ask questions about why this horse drifted massively the last day, got beat, now is massively gambled on and wins. If this is something that is pushed through, and I think what's going to happen, I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm going to guess that ITV are going to look at the list of trainers who've signed that document saying they want payment for interviews and are going to say, we respect your right to no longer be interviewed by ITV, and we will no longer trouble you for an interview. And black them out. And that's it. No more interviews for those trainers. Might not even mention them on the shows anymore. You don't need to. You're doing them a favor. ITV are doing them a favor, and ITV are the biggest platform this sport has. Champions Full Gallop was a disaster of a documentary, but ITV is the biggest platform this sport has, by far. And this is a stupid thing to do. But what it will also do, if they do for some reason decide to pay, it will breed more hostile interviews. And you'll start getting real questions about performances in the same way that football managers and football players are questioned on performances by Sky and the BBC and all that. Like, that's what's going to happen. So, good job, Peter Saville. Good job. Who we'd love to interview on the show. Talk more about this. Proceed.
Go on, just go back to that classic Novice Hurdle. The one I wanted to take out the race, probably long term, was the third place Bill Joyce for John Joe and AJ O'Neill. He travelled really well again. Yeah. And he hasn't been spared this year. He's had 3 graded races now on the back of his impressive win at Carlisle. He beat Quebecois by a similar distance as he did in the win to Novice Hurdle, despite giving more weight away. I just think Bill Joyce probably one we won't see the best of until he goes chasing next year over 3 miles. He just needs, strangely, he looks like he wants 3 miles, but he needs to settle a bit early on in his races. So I think on soft ground, he'll probably take a chance in the Albert Bartlett's, and he wouldn't be one. He'd probably one who might run a decent race at massive odds, but we'll probably see the best of him next year when he goes chasing.
Yeah. And the potato race, all talk of that race, with the exception of JetBlue being tipped up by Adam Mills, is banned until the day before or the week before Cheltenham, because it is a nightmare of a race. Unless
his form was franked at the weekend in Riverdon, wasn't it? So he, those who finished third to JetBlue at Cheltenham came out and won the Riverdon. So as a form boost for him.
Stay Away Faye got beaten the Riverdon, didn't he? And then went on and won the potato race.
He did, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Finished second. Yeah.
Okay. I might need to take more of a look at that race, but it's a nightmare of a race. All right. That's it. Who is the one anti-post recommendation from Paul Ferguson from this episode? And before you give that answer, get £5. This is the biggest discount you can get for the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide, and it is the essential guide to the Cheltenham Festival. Do not bet on Cheltenham without Paul Ferguson and Weatherby's excellent Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide. Go to weatherbyshop.co.uk now and enter the exclusive Final Furlong podcast promo code. If you're in Ireland, weatherbyshop.ie, €5 off in Ireland, £5 off the print copy, the digital copy, or the print and digital bundle by using the promo code, which should scroll along the screen, FFCFBG25. Final Furlong Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide 25. FFCFBG25. £5 off your purchase of the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide only with the Final Furlong podcast. Paul, what's the one Ante-Post recommendation for us?
Can I do a race that we haven't covered? Well, I thought we were covering. Well, we did touch upon it with the Ryanair. I just don't think there's much value in the race we've covered at the minute. We obviously touched upon it briefly. The Ryanair could change significantly if Factor File enters the picture. And I think it looks a stronger race than last year when Protectorate run it. When he won it, I think obviously Spillan was going there, but one also I thought has been crying out for a drop in trip is Heartwood of Henry de Bromhead. I think 25 to 1's a fair price about him at the minute. Obviously beat Corbett's Cross first time out. Was a winner at last year's Dublin Racing Festival when he was really impressive in the handicap, and then he went to Aintree. And again, I didn't think he fully saw the trip out behind I Know the Way You're Thinking on a Rocco. Won over 2-7 at Wexford, came back in trip because he was still a novice to contest that Drimore that I've mentioned a couple of times. He was only beaten a neck by Croke Park on that occasion, and I thought he travelled well in the Savills Chase for a long way behind Galloping de Champs. Again, doesn't fully see it out. I think the Ryanair, ridden prominently on the new course and in the Ryanair, probably could see him in good light. So look at the top of the market. Factor File, we don't know at this stage. Mightn't run. Banbridge mightn't run. Gaelic Warrior mightn't run. El Fabiola mightn't run. Spillan's Tower likely. Ile Francais will be a fascinating contender.
Mm-hmm.
I say, I think Protectorate there on your screens 10 to 1. He won really impressively in the Fleur de Lis at Windsor, but I do think that chase track at Windsor, I do think both tracks actually, but I think the chase track in particular in the two meetings we've seen does seem to favour a horse who gets an uncontested or a nice easy lead, seems to get into a rhythm there, and I think that might have been the case with him. So I think he's going to need to improve. Energamine, surely not going to run grade on, doubtful, so it does look like a race that could cut up a bit. I think touched briefly on Jungle Boogie before. I was at Ascot the day he won and I was quite impressed with him. I'll say stablemate, I thought. Literally watching the Savills over Christmas, I did think he looks like one who could come back and trip, and I think 25 to 1's a fair price about Heartwood. Yeah,
and bear in mind he had form at Corbett's Cross last season as well. I really like Heartwood. I really like him, and I think that's a big shout. 25 to 1 is a very intriguing bet. You can get it now with Jeff Banks. Jeff Banks bet. Use the promo code FFP500. You get 10% of any net losses back, up to £500 after your first month of betting. Also, best odds guaranteed meetings, even. All kinds of goodies, all kinds of incentives, and you can stream British and Irish racing on the Jeff Banks app and jeffbanks.bet. FFP500. Sign up now to take full advantage of all the great offers at the Jeff Banks website for the Cheltenham Festival, including 25 to 1 about Henry de Bromhead's Heartwood for the Ryanair Chase. Bioluminescence is a recommended bet for me for the Mare's Chase at 8 to 1. I think that will look very, very big about a horse that Gavin Cromwell has been raving about since the days he won a point-to-point with her. And giving weight to Dancing City, that's form that's going to look good, I think, in the end. For all that, I'm not sure Dancing City would win the Brown Advisory. That's still a damn big performance. Paul, it's always a pleasure talking to you on the Final Furlong podcast. Looking forward to talking to you again in a couple of weeks. It's not too far away, actually, for our part 2 of the Final Furlong podcast Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of the Final Furlong. If you liked it, likes are much appreciated on YouTube. Shares are much appreciated on social media as well. Hit that subscribe button on your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, all the others, all the good podcast apps and the rubbish ones as well. It's a massive help with the algorithm. Take full advantage of the discount, which is available on your screen now. £5 off your copy of the excellent Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival Betting Guide. You can pre-order it now at weatherbyshop.co.uk, weatherbys.ie, FFCFBG25 for £5 off. It's an offer you will not get anywhere else but the Final Furlong podcasts. From all of us, look after yourself and each other.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.